Yeah.
Let me start that. And now we will start this.
Yeah.
And here we go, Elizabeth. In three, two, one, you're live.
Hello, 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 Santa Barbara. It's your chantress of everything valuable and beautiful, Elizabeth Stewart. And I am joined by Ralph Clevenger, who I gotta say, he just surprises me a million times. The work just gets more and more interesting, more and more vast, more. I mean, we had mermaids. Now we have something completely different. They're kelp forests now that Ralph is going to talk to us about. And this is the Santa Barbara Channel Islands kelp forest, looking through the kelp forest through the lens of Ralph Clevenger's photography. And this is because the Santa Barbara Maritime Museum is opening a show, and the curator is with us today too, Emily Falk. We're going to talk about the show called Redwoods of the Sea: Life in the Channel Islands Kelp Forest, on view from September 11th to January 4th. Um, I tried to look into this a little bit, and I want to start off by saying, Ralph, you know, you're shooting underwater photography, right?
Right, correct.
So how do you not get trapped in that stuff?
Trapped in the kelp.
Yeah.
Well, it's the
I
same
mean, I'm
way.
looking at it thinking, how do you swim around those things?
Well, I'm on scuba most of the time, so I'm not necessarily swimming at the surface where the kelp is the densest.
Right.
It's like a forest, you know. I mean, you walk between the trees in a forest. You If you were up at the top and all the trees were touching, it would be a little more difficult. So I am lower in the water column, and there's quite a bit of space to swim around.
Okay, so do you see any other, I dare I say, wildlife swimming
Well,
around?
yeah, this is one of the most biodiverse ecosystems in the world. There's over 1,000 species of animals that live in the kelp forest.
Okay. So 1,000 species, and I'm wanting to know the bigger ones.
Um, Sea lions, seals, sharks, rays, mermaids.
Mermaids. That was a couple of years ago, Ralph, that you were photographing mermaids, I believe. I want to just pause for a minute. This is the first time, Emily, in like 15 years that I know your full name. Because I asked Heather, your press agent, to send me a bio. Like, yeah, I have a file on you, so I don't know why I couldn't find it, but I couldn't find your bio. And so she sent me a bio, and the title on the bio is Emily Waingrow Falk.
Correct.
So tell me, Waingrow, is that a maiden, a family?
That's what I mean.
Okay. Okay. I don't think I've ever seen that name before. Kind of unique. Um, so right now, we just do a little background is Emily is director of collections and exhibits at the Santa Barbara Maritime Museum. She's been with the museum since 2010. She's had a lot of different roles. What she's kind of landed now is, I think, perfect because she's got a very artistic eye, and I'm just amazed at the fact that the walls are not falling down there, Emily, because of all the paint over the years that you've put on those walls. Every exhibit is keyed to a certain color palette, and it's always beautiful. It always blends so beautifully with the work that Emily's showing. Um, we started. She said, you know, she actually she and I were like soulmates at one point because she came to us from the direct as a director of special events at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, which I never knew. So I was at the museum school there for a while, you know, and I was wrongly studying art, which that was never going to be my forte. But for a while, it was like, okay, I think I can be an artist. Well, no, I can write more about art. I'm not good at making it. I can write about it. And so she was from the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. Are you a Bostonian?
No, I'm actually originally from Connecticut.
Okay.
Then I moved to Claremont when my dad taught at the graduate level at Yale, and then we moved to the Claremont for the Claremont colleges. So I grew up east of Los Angeles.
Okay. Okay. And then I didn't know any of this. It's just really cool to have this old bio. Heather sent me the public affairs special event for Beth Israel Hospital in Boston, and then an art teacher at a friend's school in Bakersfield, and then an art teacher at St. John's in Bakersfield, and then Bakersfield's Museum of Art. Now she's graduated into museum work, Emily has, by 1999, and then curator and director of development at Bakersfield Museum of Art till 2010. And then you ended up being here, director of education. I think, weren't you first in education at the museum?
Education and curator was a dual role.
Okay. Okay. And then, so, what do you do, Emily? Okay, so I want to take this as a case study. Here you have somebody that comes to you, it's underwater photography, and this is Ralph's work, the Redwoods of the Sea, Life in the Channel Islands Kelp Forest. And you've got this very evocative, different world to show. What's your first step?
Well, this was so exciting for me. And I told Ralph the minute we started that this was going to be his artsiest show that we've had because I wanted to make the walls colors where you would feel like you were underwater. So
Aha.
if there's paintings, I mean, if there's photos that are really jadey blue, the wall's jade. So the jade recesses and the color of the kelp pops out. So you honestly feel like you're in it. And I did that kind of with the colors on this one. I think it really worked in this show, really lent itself towards that. And I said, Ralph, we're going to go really big. We're going to print these really big, and people are going to walk through feeling like they're in the redwood forest. And I think that was a big goal and an exciting goal.
So I just want to mention the press release that I'm holding here. We're talking about huge things. These kelp forests. Um, it's described as a towering underwater landscape, and then we have these objects like trees. I don't know what the Latin is. Macrocystis pyrifera,
Pyrifera.
and they. Okay, how do you say, Ralph?
Pyrifera.
Pyrifera,
Macrocystis pyrifera. Yeah.
and they
Giant
can grow
kelp.
up. They can grow up to 2 feet a day,
Hmm.
and they can be 100 feet.
Yes, that's right. A little more than 100 feet, actually.
One fish.
So okay. So I'm trying to picture what's 100 feet. So is my house? What's 100 feet?
Well, one story, I think, is 20 feet, maybe
Oh
25
boy.
feet.
So it's 5 stories.
Yeah, that's probably
So
close.
it's like a huge apartment building.
Well, it's more like a forest. I'm not equating it to an apartment building. We're
I'm
equating
trying
it
to
to
think.
the
I
to the
know.
redwood. Have you ever been to the redwood forest?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay, well then think about that. Although they do get taller, they get up to 300 feet. So, but still, it's a forest.
Okay. So we have these trees that are 5 stories tall. They're kelp
Okay,
trees,
okay,
kelp
they're not
for.
trees. They're not trees. They're algae. They're not even plants. They're
How
algae.
interesting.
Yeah, there are very few plants in the ocean. In fact, off our coast, there's only two plants. Everything else is algae.
Okay, so I don't know if you know this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What's the smallest algae known, and are the kelp the largest known?
Yes, the Macrocystis, the giant kelp, is the largest. The smallest is phytoplankton, microscopic plankton.
Okay, that's the one that the whales eat, right?
Well, they eat plankton. They don't necessarily eat them. The whales don't eat the algae. the whales eat the zooplankton, the animal plankton that feed on the phytoplankton. So they're eating small shrimp about half an inch long, the big whales.
Okay. And they're all in the same family. The small
Mm,
things that we can't see with our eyes up to the large
well,
100 feet kelp.
the same kingdom, not the same family.
Okay.
So
Got it.
yeah.
Okay. Got it. And now, okay. So two topics. How did you become interested in this, Ralph? And that's, and it's going to dovetail, I know, into our other topic, which is, you've said that these are one of the most crucially affected and diverse biosystems, ecosystems, and they're really under threat right now. So I imagine that had something to do with how this captured your attention. So tell me, how did you discover this love for kelp?
Okay. Well, kelp is a cold water or colder water organism. In other words, you don't find them in the tropics, just like we don't find coral reefs here in the cold water. So living here in Santa Barbara and diving here in Santa Barbara, kelp is the most interesting ecosystem that you're involved in. So it's not hard. Every time you go diving, you're going to be diving in or near a kelp forest. So um, and then that's where this interest came from. I mean, it wasn't even an interest. You were everywhere you looked, you saw kelp when you dove here. And I'm sorry, I forgot the second part of your question.
Oh, it was about the threat. So,
Oh
and
yeah,
part of what I was looking at here, I had no idea. I mean, I'm probably wearing parts of kelp on my face. They're
yes,
in cosmetics, they're in ice cream.
yeah. Yeah, kelp is a commercially harvested product off our coast here in Santa Barbara, and the algin, which is the kind of slimy stuff that's in algae, it's a product that is extracted from the kelp plant, and it's an emulsifier. So it goes into cosmetics and even medicines use it. So it holds things together when you mix them and stuff like that. And it's also, people eat kelp. Japanese eat a lot of kelp.
Mhm.
So you can buy kelp chips in the store. So, it is a commercially viable product.
Well, it's funny that you say that because my grandson was, very, 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 very fussy eater and was, there was a weight issue. And the doctors are saying, you got to get him to eat. What did he like to eat? He liked those kelp chips that you're talking about. And they're apparently packed with healthy ingredients.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're good to eat.
Okay, so just a little bit background about Ralph. This is also amazing to me. You grew up on the coast of North Africa?
Yes.
Where?
In Libya and Egypt.
Oh, see, why were you there?
My dad was a geophysicist, and the company he was with was exploring for oil.
Okay, and so did he dive as well?
He snorkeled. He free dove. That's where I learned, to go snorkeling.
Okay, and so then you went to did you go to this? No, you actually pursued a career in marine biology and you worked as a diver slash biologist for the Scripps Institute of Oceanography. That's in San Diego, correct?
That's correct. La Jolla. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, in La Jolla there. It's a beautiful long pier, if I remember.
Yes, that's off of the
Okay.
institute.
How did you get from there to Santa Barbara?
Oh, well, I didn't go on to get a PhD in science, which is, you kind of have to do that if you want to do anything. Instead, I was interested in photography. And so came up here to Brooks Institute of Photography and became good friends with Ernie Brooks. and took all the underwater photo classes and did it that way.
Okay. And then you taught at Brooks for quite a while.
Yes, 33 years.
That's quite a while. Yeah, that's marvelous. Do you have a, okay, so I always ask teachers, and Emily was in the teaching profession for a while too. I've been teaching assistant, I was at USC and various places where I was coming up through various degrees. And I was teaching assistant, and I always was pondering in myself and also in really advanced and senior professors and teachers, especially in the creative arts. How do you recognize talent?
Well,
Ralph, and you've had
um,
33 years.
yeah. So Brooks Institute of Photography was very unique because the people who came to Brooks, the young people who came to Brooks, well, they weren't that young. The average age was 22, I think, 23, so a little bit older. They might have gone to a university or college before they came to Brooks, but they had made the decision that photography or filmmaking was the career they wanted. So a lot of people go to college not quite sure what they want, and they're certainly introduced to many different things and take their path. So it was different there. We had a focused student body who knew what they wanted to do. So finding, and obviously it doesn't mean you have to be creative talent. You can be business talent, just working in the field. We offered courses in all of those areas, not just the creative components, but the business components as well. So, it's not, it's more about, about like everything. It's the hard work and sticking to it and deciding that this really is a passion for you. And I think that's true of probably any field you go into.
Yeah, but how do you recognize talent? So, okay, so I'll give you two examples, and Emily, I want to hear from you too about this. So, it, I interviewed artists, and I know Emily knows Michael Drury, and he's a wonderful artist, and he's also, a avid surfer, and he paints a lot of maritime himself. And Michael has taught or did teach at Santa Barbara City College for like 40 some odd years. And I said, you've seen them all. How do you recognize talent, especially because Michael was teaching oil. So he was, specifically teaching oil painting. Um, and I'm going to surprise you. Let's see if you get this comment. I bet you Emily will get it. Ralph, I'm not so sure you will. So Michael's comment was, of course, he's a teacher in oil, and he says, I recognize talent when a student knows when to finish a painting. To it's the end of the painting, when to finish. And I said, well, Michael, how do you know when a student knows how to finish a painting? And his response was right before they start to paint the brown potato in the sky. Okay, what that means is anybody who's painted with oil, and Emily, you know this for sure, the more you mix and think, oh, that's not right, this isn't perfect, it turns a gray brown mush and you have the brown potato in the sky. In other words, they were working on the clouds, let's say, or the sky, which is always a challenge for young painters. So, and then all of a sudden they're presented with here's the brown potato in the sky. So I guess Ralph, you're teaching, and you taught specifically natural history and underwater photography, right?
Yeah, among many other courses, but yes, all
Okay.
photography.
So give me an example of recognizing talent in a student. Do you have a student that comes to mind that you just thought, okay,
Well, yeah, when the students all get the same assignment photographically. They all get the same assignment, and the assignment has criteria associated with it. There's a reason for creating the picture, so they have to create an image that supports that reason. So when you put the picture up on the screen in class and you're putting 30 people's work up one after another, The
Yeah.
ones the ones that actually work, there's an intuitive reaction to good art of any kind, based on compositions and colors and all that stuff. So that part of it, but does it execute the assignment? Because they're not there. They didn't go to Brooks to become artists. They went to Brooks to make a living. And to make a living, someone has to pay you. So you're not creating work for yourself. You're creating work for the person who's going to pay you. So this is what was so unique about Brooks. So I would be thinking in terms of the person, I'm the person who's going to pay you. I gave you the assignment, and is this solving my problems that I'm trying to fix? So the ones that stood out are the ones that did that. And generally speaking, it's not always the same person, but a lot of times it is the same group of students.
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. It's a slightly different focus. Um, so and I want to hear you talk about this too. Your book, which I actually have, is Photographing Nature, and that's published by New Writers. And I think we covered that when that came out on the air. And my question would be, are you thinking in the book, is it a pedagogical kind of book where you're showing how commercial photography could work? Was that part of the book?
Yeah, but a little, a minor part of the book, because the book is about nature photography. It's essentially my natural history photography course. And, I most people who do nature photography are amateurs, many of them very dedicated photographers and naturalists. So they're not necessarily interested in the commercial aspect of trying to sell images of animals and things. So no, the book does not focus on the commercial aspect. Um, I mean, there is some of that in there, but not much.
Okay, so it wasn't so much focus. And then, okay, Richard's giving us a sign. We got to go to quick break. Emily, very quickly, yeah, tell me, and I want to talk a little more about, but how do you recognize talent yourself?
Well, I was actually teaching kindergarten through eighth grade, so very different than Ralph's experience, and mostly painting, some sculpture in the two private schools in Bakersfield, one high school gig to get my credential. I really think it's about seeing how people see things. And I would recognize very quickly in students a unique way that they saw things and how that sort of processed in their brain and made its way onto paper. And it would really stand out. It's really hard to articulate this, but I mean, we all see things very differently, of course, but it was astounding differences between people. And if say it's the same subject, like Ralph said, you might be saying we're going to paint, the vista outside the door of the elementary school. Completely different versions, but it's really about the eye and seeing that. I think the talent's mixed up in that. If that, I know that sounds very convoluted, but that's how I see it.
Okay, so that makes sense. So now I'm going to sort of segue the question after we get back from the break, and Richard can take us to break. So you're curating some pretty fantastic artists in the at the Maritime Museum. Likewise, how do you recognize what's going to make it onto the walls and make a a real important statement on the walls of the Maritime Museum? And Richard, let's go to quick break, and Emily can answer that question. It's super interesting to me because Emily, I had at USD I had a class. I was working on an advanced degree, and I was it the curator can really sway the eye and lead to conclusions about the work in a really profound way that's what is the word? Not blatant, but not insidious. What's the other word?
You can either enhance the work or not, but I feel like
Enhance, but there's another word I'm looking for where it's inherent the philosophy becomes inherent in the choices that the curator is making without the viewer really knowing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I want to ask you about that when we get back from the break and maybe tie that into how this exhibit with Ralph's work, which is so important regarding the future of the kelp forest, how you made that a statement about the importance of keeping these forests thriving. Okay, Richard, that's a big question. When we get back from the break, we'll ask both Ralph Clevenger and Emily Falk that question. Don't turn that down. Back in a minute.
In 3, 2, 1, you are live.
Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart. I'm speaking with a photographer, and I know you're a commercial photographer, but I want to say fine artist as well. Ralph Clevenger and also Emily Falk, who's the curator of the exhibit that's open now, actually, at the museum, and it's called The Redwoods of the Sea, Life in the Channel Islands Kelp Forest. And Emily, I wonder if you talk to us a little bit about that. Um, the way that you took hold of Ralph's photos and created a story or a narrative around those photos, and what that narrative was, and what the inherent philosophy was behind your choices.
Well, in the case of this exhibit with Ralph, he had a lot to do with the story and the way it was laid out. He's wonderful with that. So I would probably ask him that question as well because he's the brains behind that. I would say for me, it was how to bring that story alive on the walls and how to bring the viewer into the story, deep into the story, like they're actually in the water. They're actually viewing this beauty that we need to preserve. And it's so glorious. And I feel like as a curator, you have the chance and actually the obligation to enhance the artist's story and their work and to bring it alive. And you can do it or you cannot do it. And I've seen both. And that is my greatest love of this job. And my goal is to really bring wonderful art alive and in a even bigger way than maybe could have been imagined. And it makes a huge impact on the viewer because if you walk into, say, Ralph's show and it was in a square room on white walls, it would have a completely different impact than the way it's laid out, the colors, the lighting, everything about it. Ralph's words, there's a beautiful piece of poetry that he added to the exhibit, which is probably one of my favorite parts of the exhibit. And all of those components made this show just people would just walk in and go, wow. But that is the work of the artist and the curator to make that impact.
Got it.
That's my work.
Okay. And then Ralph, so tell me a little bit about this little bit of poems.
Well, it's a quote from Charles Darwin from his trip around the world in 1812. And it's a quote about the kelp forests off the coast of South America, which is the same type of kelp that we have. And his comment on how important it was. And if the kelp disappeared, all of the animals would disappear. And even the people, the Fuegans who lived there would probably disappear as well because their entire environment, their entire culture was based on harvesting from the kelp forests. So, but I want to add that, Emily it was really important when she told me that she wanted big prints. I mean, I love big prints. So it was important to know that she was going in that direction as well, because that means I have only X number of prints that can go up, right? Because they're bigger, they're not a lot of small prints. So I have to be able to tell the story of the kelp forest within a smaller number. And then also the addition of in the theater in the museum, that became a place to educate people about not just kelp, but the animals and the threats to those animals and to the kelp. So we could isolate this threat concept to the kelp forest in the theater. And that made the walls outside the theater, more of the pretty stuff. So
I get it. Okay, so Emily was rejoicing the fact that you had done huge big prints and she could wrap the prints around different rooms, is what I'm hearing.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and also, I mean, her choice of doing metal, printing the images on
Yeah.
metal, it's just an incredibly gorgeous material, provides a lot of depth. So those are her choices. So you know, her role in that was important to make the show successful.
Okay. So okay, now for people that don't know, Emily, the difference between printing on, say, canvas like a G-clay or metal, you chose metal for what reason?
The surface is very shiny, and it does tend to give you a lot more depth than a canvas does. And there's a lot of depth in these photographs, so it just lends itself perfectly, to be.
Okay. Excellent. Oh, excellent. Okay. So the idea of this endangered massive forest, I want to get back to that, Ralph. I want to ask number one, how much of the ocean is, I don't know, do you say inhabited by these kelp forests? That's question number one. And question
Okay.
number two, what kind of threats do they face?
Okay. So again, um, kelp only grows in the colder water. So, and I think I saw some data that about 20% of the ocean, and it's all coastal. Kelp can only grow in about 100 feet of water, 150 feet max. This species of kelp, giant kelp, there's many species of kelp, but we're focused on this one. So about 20% of the ocean's environment can support kelp. So it's not in the tropics. So that's how much, but it's off the coast of New Zealand, coast of southern South America, the coast of Japan, Alaska, all the way down. It ends about just south of Baja, maybe. There's no kelp below that. So, and this species does not occur in the Atlantic, but there are other kelps in the Atlantic. So anyway, so it is worldwide. And then the threats, that was the second part, right? The threats.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so what happened here on our coast? I'm going to talk about the west coast of North America. So California, Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, and Alaska. So what happened here is in 2013, there was a unusually strong warm water event in the Eastern Pacific. It's an event that occurs, these water temperatures go up, and they don't really know why. It has a lot to do with winds and things. It's not necessarily a climate change thing, but it could be. They don't know. Anyway, this warm water event occurred, and because of the warm water event, some specific types of bacteria were able to proliferate. One of those bacteria caused what's called a wasting disease in sea
Oh,
stars, okay,
uh-huh.
in sea stars, in all types of sea stars. And it was a serious disease. It wiped out several species. It wiped out billions of individual organisms. And the main one that we were concerned with relative to kelp was the sunflower star, which is a very large sea star. And it killed every sunflower star north of Monterey, almost. I mean, literally almost wiped it out. So the sunflower sea stars feed on purple urchins. Purple urchins feed on kelp. So when you lose the sunflower sea stars, the purple urchins went crazy and ate all of the kelp. 95% of the kelp forests north of Monterey are gone. 95%. It didn't affect us as much here down in the channel. So they've now discovered what bacteria that is, and they're now growing baby sunflower sea stars, and they're going to replant them and hopefully get this whole system back in equilibrium.
I get it. Okay. So, and who is they?
There's a variety of oceanographic organizations like the Long Beach Aquarium, the Sunflower Sea Star Lab. So and universities, marine biology research people are trying to
Yeah.
solve this problem.
Okay. And so how dire is it? In other words, do we have the kelp forests in our future, or are they slowly leaving us, or what's the
No,
prognosis?
well, it's dire in Northern California and Oregon and Washington, but now that but they have ways. Some of the kelp plants, some of the sunflower sea stars did survive. So the question is how did they survive? I mean, we're talking just about a few, but once they can isolate these kinds of things, they can bring the sunflower sea stars back. So no, I don't think the kelp forests are in imminent danger of extinction. Um, but certainly in some areas, it's been a disaster in terms of their survivability. And it affects humans, affects fisheries, it affects everything. So, but they'll come back. I mean, they grow 2 feet a day, so they
Right.
can come back pretty fast.
Okay. And so the when you go down and photograph the kelp forest, are you by yourself? Do you have an assistant? And how long does it take down there? What are you looking for? What are you documenting?
Um, well, when you scuba dive, you have a tank of air, and that's only going to last so long, and depends on the depth. And so I'm usually above 50 feet when I'm diving, and so I can last an hour easy. So I've got an hour, and you're usually swimming around looking for interesting things, animals that in the kelp and the fish, and then if I can't find anything interesting animal wise, I usually end up photographing the kelp itself because it's everywhere. But I'm always looking for very clean kelp, very pretty kelp. And these pictures were taken over 35-year period.
Oh,
So
I
it's
didn't
not,
know that.
yeah. So it's not just like
Okay.
1 year of diving or anything. So yeah, 35 years.
Okay. And obviously at the beginning you're not using digital film, are you? You're not you're doing sorry, digital, you're using film at the beginning.
Yeah, and about a third of the show, maybe a little more than that, was shot on film.
So Emily, can you tell the difference? Well, I think
Emily, yeah,
you're
there you
there you
go.
go.
Can I tell the difference?
Yeah, in other words, when you're mounting the show, you're like, "Oh, that even though you don't know the year it's from, can you tell what's film and what's digital?"
No.
No,
No.
I probably should be able to. Should I be able to, Ralph?
no, you shouldn't. I don't know if anybody would be able to tell, really. So, yeah, a lot of the close-ups in the montages were film.
Do you have any special credentials or allowances to get into the marine protected areas as a diver, Ralph?
Well, anybody can go into marine protected areas. You just can't hunt. You can't shoot things or, you know, so that's the only criteria. Everything's protected.
Now I'm going to ask a dumb question. So Richard's giving us a sign. Richard, well, let's go to quick break. I want to ask about the sea urchins, Ralph, and the relationship to Santa Barbara and the sea urchins, and if it has any tie-in at all with the kelp that you've been looking at in the past. This is news to me, 35 years. I know we've had a sea urchin thing in Santa Barbara, so I want to hear what you have to say about that. Hey, Richard, let's go to quick break.
Okay.
All
Do you want
right,
me to answer this?
and three,
Times are
two,
great. Just good.
one. You are live. Final segment. You're live.
No, I think
Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart. We're talking with Ralph Clevenger and especially Emily Falk, the curator at the Santa Barbara Maritime Museum. The show is called Redwoods of the Sea, Life in the Channel Islands Kelp Forest. It opened mid-September, beyond till beginning of January. So it's important to take a look at it because what I'm understanding, these are 100 feet I was going to say plants, algae, 100 feet algae, and they're beautiful, and they are wild to look at, and it's quite otherworldly. Emily's done a curatorship par excellence, and you'll feel like you're in the kelp forest. And my question for Ralph was that, he talked a little bit about the sea urchin populations, the explosion of sea urchin population, and the loss of 95% of kelp along some stretches of the California coast and going up northerly still. Um, Sea urchins, didn't at one point we farm them to almost extinction here in Santa Barbara? And now what's happening? Go ahead.
Okay, not sea urchins. We have farmed some animals almost to extinction, abalone for existence.
Okay.
Yeah, but no sea urchins, and we have several species of sea urchins. And one species in particular, it's called the purple urchin, and it's a smaller urchin. I mean, many people in Santa Barbara understand what uni is, and we have a healthy sea urchin fishery here in Santa Barbara, a very important one, and they're basically harvesting a different species of urchin, a larger species. So the purple urchin isn't generally harvested by humans. And purple urchins eat kelp, always have. But there's in a healthy ecosystem, there's a balance. And one of the interesting things they found out was if the sea urchins eat the entire kelp forest, and they run out of food, you'd think that they would all die, right? All the sea urchins would die. They're out of food. And the kelp would come back, but they don't die. These purple urchins actually go into a zombie state. So they'll just
Ah,
stop moving, stop eating, and wait until the kelp grows back. And then they attack again. And they can wait for years. So we had to come up with something else to help solve this problem. And that one of them is this sunflower sea star. But the sea otters in Northern Cal, we don't have them down here, but in Northern California, they'll eat purple urchins. They won't eat the zombie urchins because there's no meat in them, but they'll eat healthy urchins. So a healthy sea otter population. But it's not something that we can go in as humans and collect all the purple urchins. I mean, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of millions of them. So we're having to step in to save some of the species that will save the kelp forests.
before we have to go, I just want to give a quick shout out that Ralph, who's going to be featured in the show, um, at the Santa Barbara Maritime Museum, Redwoods of the Sea, Life in the Channel Islands Kelp Forest, is responsible for many credits, including Audubon, Backpacker, Islands, Afar, National Geographic. His work was featured in National Geographic Traveler, Nature's Best, Nature Conservatory, Oceans, Outside, Orion, Nature Quarterly, Terre Sauvage. He's been in books such as the National Geographic publications, the Smithsonian publications, the Sierra Club publications, internationally and nationally published maritime underwater photographer. So honored that you're here. And gosh, Emily, congratulations on the show. And it's wonderful to talk to both of you. And thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Redwoods of the Sea, Life in the Channel Islands Kelp Forest. There's a charming, charming little shot, and this is my favorite. Young harbor seal, kind of looking. It's absolutely adorable. It's a must see. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, Richard, thanks.
You're welcome. And there we go. Okay.